Kate Milafalcha, welcome to Irish Granny Helen, and welcome to Debbra Lupien, voice of the AKASHIC Records. And here we are in this spooky Halloween week, Deborah.
Yes. Excited to see what we're going to find out now.
Are you nervous?
Nervous? No. Curious. Very curious.
You should be nervous. There's this scary looking woman breathing over your shoulder.
Oh, she's got a dagger.
Oh my God. I don't know. I'm concerned about you now. This is the second sharp instrument in a row.
Yeah.
I have to think what you have cooked up for the next one. Oh my God.
She's plotting.
Well, let's just get started, okay, and see what happens. And I guess I should say that we're having a storm and my lights have been flickering. So if this suddenly is plunged into darkness, it's not Joan Crawford coming to get me. It's the power. But this should still keep going. So we'll fingers
Awesome.
crossed. Yeah. Oh, what am I doing? I'm hitting the end recording button. Now that would be pathetic, wouldn't it? Okay. Let me get my two brain cells back together here. So, yes?
You're good.
Oh, well, let's not exaggerate. Okay, Joan Crawford, who was born in, we don't know, because she started out lying about her age. So sometime between 1904 and 1908, depending. It's different on every application and contract. And so, and she was not born Joan Crawford. She was born Lucille Fleur Lesueur. And they made her change her name because they thought it sounded like a stage name. It didn't sound real. That's her real name, which is funny because Fleur Lesueur, I mean, come on. Her sister's name is Daisy Lesueur. But when she changed her name, we'll talk about it. When we changed her name, I think it was Louis B. Mayer had a contest and fans got to name her. And they picked one name, but it was already taken. So then she got Joan Crawford. Okay, so let's ask some questions here. Her father left their family when she was 10 months old. And, you know, she was a baby. So I'm not sure that she necessarily even realized. Actually, she didn't know that her stepfather wasn't her biological father. So I've kind of a double-barreled question. This seems to be a running theme at that time period, the early 1900s. This is the third famous Hollywood person in a row that we've done, maybe the fourth, where the father has just abandoned the family. So my question for her is, was that common and was it tolerated at that time? And then what was it like for her to discover that her stepfather wasn't her biological father?
Okay, so Joan, can you tell us, this fathers abandoning their children, was that a commonplace thing in your time? Yeah, more common than you would imagine because people were so poor. Times were hard. Sometimes the men just couldn't cope. They felt like failures. And the only way to escape those feelings of despair and watching their families look at them, expecting them to save the day when they couldn't do it, it was so soul-crushing for them. The only thing they could think to do was to leave. It was just total escapism and start over. So it happened a lot. It was very sad, but not uncommon, sadly. And so what about your stepfather? Tell us about finding out that he wasn't your biological father. He was really a step. It was a shock when I found out because I had been living thinking that I was one of the lucky ones who had escaped having my father desert me. And here it turns out it was all a lie. So it took a while to wrap my head around that, to come to terms with it. But I was grateful that there was someone there who did love me and was willing to support my mother and I.
Did the fact that so many men abandoned their families, did it create kind of like a subculture of, I don't know, resentment or feelings of abandonment? I mean, was there a high percentage of people in her generation who were struggling with that? That create a kind of ambiance and atmosphere?
So can you speak to that, Joan? What was that like? What it did was spawned charitable organizations who stepped up to fill the gap for those families who were struggling. And there were these families on the fringe who were barely making it because they didn't have a breadwinner in the family. So they banded together, they helped one another. And then those who were more fortunate would use what they had to help, to throw us the crumbs because it made them feel better. What it did with us is bred resentment because they looked down upon us. We were the underprivileged living off their crumbs.
Well, you probably know we're having a huge class divide that's growing in our time right now. And maybe you could talk about some of those organizations that you mentioned that were so helpful. We need to come up with ideas, to help people who need help. And what organizations were successful, who did a good job?
So could you tell us the organizations that you were aware of who helped during this time and who did a good job, who were appreciated? There were the women's groups where the women were able to beg a little money from their wealthy husbands because, of course, they did not have their own agency at the time. And they could feel better by coming together and helping us. And they had many names. They came and went. They were not solid foundations who lasted over time because things were changing rapidly in society. There were always the church groups who helped out. And who else? Anybody else that springs to mind? Nothing specific. It changed a lot. So there's nothing that stands out for her in that way.
Thanks. So she got to her stepfather was the manager of the opera house in town. And there were a lot of vaudeville acts that went through there, and she got to watch them as a child. And I just wonder, did she have favorites? What did she see in vaudeville that I'm really interested in vaudeville because a lot of the variety shows that were popular in the 60s, and Sullivan and Dean Martin and people like that, a lot of those people either came from vaudeville or modeled themselves after early vaudeville. And I'm wondering who or what did she see that made an impression?
So in the time of vaudeville, was there anything that stood out to you that made an impression? What surprised me was the camaraderie among the show folks, because when you step back and you look at the big picture, it was kind of cutthroat. They were competing against one another for a limited amount of jobs. It was a hard scrabble life. And despite this, there were real deep relationships that were formed. Of course, myself being guarded, not necessarily trusting everybody. It was a challenge for me to find those people that I could trust and allow them to support me. I was very suspicious of anybody's motives. And it was such a contrast that I had trouble reconciling that in my own psyche. And it's something throughout my life that actually was a recurring energy, that trust. There was always something in the back of me because my father had left me, that how could I trust that they would stay?
Right. Yeah. So it made more of an impact than maybe you'd recognize on the surface. There's a story that you cut your foot really, really badly as a child, and it prevented you from taking your dance lessons and dancing the way you wanted to. I'm really curious. I know you stepped on glass, is what I heard the injury was. What did you do? Cut some tendons or something? What actually happened to your foot?
So could you tell us about the injury to your foot? What was that about? How did that happen? What was the damage? She was carrying this big porcelain bowl, you know, this kind that they used to wash in. This water bowl.
A wash bowl, yeah.
She slipped. She splashed some water. She slipped, fell, broke the bowl. And so it was that thick, jagged porcelain that as she's falling, she fell on it and cut her foot. So can you tell us what was the damage that it actually did? Well, she was very fortunate. It didn't permanently damage the tendons where it could have. It was more of a surface level cut, but it was at a place where the kind of movement she needed for dancing would aggravate it and keep pulling it back open. So it was just a matter of that she needed to give herself the time to heal. And then she was fine and was able to get past it over time.
Did she get stitches?
Did you get stitches in it? Her mother sewed it up.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay.
She's like pouring whiskey over it to cleanse it and numb it a little. And
yeah. And disinfect it. Can you talk a little bit about when your stepfather got accused of embezzlement and you guys had to kind of move suddenly?
So tell us about what happened when your father was accused of embezzlement. It was a rough time. We didn't want to leave. We were comfortable where we were, but it was a necessity for him. So we sucked it up and we went with him. It was a very difficult transition. I was just beginning to find my footing where we were living, and suddenly everything was changed. It was all ripped away and I had to start over. Yeah. And okay, I'll confess right now, it was very selfish on my part because I wasn't thinking about what my mother and stepfather were going through. It was all about me. And, I'm sorry and embarrassed about that now.
How old were you?
So how old were you when that happened? $11.
Well, hormones. So did he really embezzle? Because there is conflicting information.
Did she really what?
Did he really embezzle? It's like he got charged with it and then exonerated, but the damage to his reputation is why they left. Now, is that true? Did he really embezzle? What really happened?
So did your stepfather really embezzle, or was that a story? He really did. It was stupid and he knew better. But he got a little greedy. Things were a little too easy for him. And he and we paid for it for a long time afterwards. Big mistake.
Yeah. He put her in a school called St. Agnes Academy. My information wasn't clear. Was that a boarding school?
So St. Agnes Academy, was that a boarding school? No, it was a private Catholic school.
So when he lost, when her parents separated, and so money was even tighter, they kept her on, but she had to work, and that's why I wasn't sure, because she did cooking and cleaning. Who was she cooking and cleaning for? The nuns?
So you were doing cooking and cleaning. Who were you? Oh, for everybody, the other students too.
But they weren't boarding schools? I'm confused.
Yeah. Can you help us understand? Were you living there? No, she wasn't living there. She had the tuition. because it was a private school.
Were
So-
were the other students living there?
Oh, did the other students live there? Yes, the other students did live there.
Okay,
But
that's what it was. Okay.
It would have cost her more if
Mhm.
she had lived there.
Mhm.
So just the work she did paid for the school, not to stay there.
Yeah, I understood that, but I didn't understand why she needed to cook and clean if it wasn't a boarding school. What cooking, what cleaning? But some students boarded and some students were day students. That my school was like that. Yeah. What was it about musicians? She got involved with a couple of musicians in a row. I'm just curious. What was it about musicians?
So what was your attraction to musicians? What was that about? Music was everything to her. It lifted her up. It made her feel good. And she swooned when a man would sing to her or write music about her. She loved that. It all goes back to the father wound. She was being nourished by them, and she felt protected and taken care of, that someone would think that much of her, to sing to her, to coddle her.
She was an older teenager during World War I and the Spanish flu. And, I know that's a pretty traumatic period of time, but I'm very interested in it. And it's almost impossible to get personal first-person information about living through the Spanish flu. Apparently, nobody wanted to talk about it. People wanted to just leave it in the past and forget about it. But those sorts of narratives are so valuable. We could have used them a few years ago. That was when I got real interested. Yeah. So I'm just wondering what her experience of it was.
So could you talk about your experience with the Spanish flu? She's swearing. It was a really rough time. And when she thinks about it, she gets these images of standing over boiling pots with sheets and towels, boiling them, disinfecting them. That was a big part of what she was doing. And it was just awful. And every day you wake up and you don't know whether you're going to get sick today or not. So it was just a hellacious time.
People died like within a day, right? Am I right about that? They would be fine.
Dropping like flies, she says. Just so much death. You could not get the smell out of your nostrils. It was pervasive. There was no escape. So the disinfectant and the smell of rotting flesh merged together. That's this visceral memory that she has. It's something she doesn't like to think about, of course, but it was just horrendous. And frankly, she's amazed that she did survive it, but she attributes that to her strength. She always had this inner strength and a will to live.
Well, the trauma of it was that it especially attacked younger people because they had such a responsive immune system. And so their bodies fought it off right away, but so powerfully that they ended up drowning it because of their own immunological system. That's basically what happened. So people would get up in the morning, have breakfast, start to not feel so great mid-morning, and by nighttime they couldn't breathe. And their body recognized and fought it off, but too effectively.
So she's saying her theory is because she was standing over those big cauldrons with the stick and stirring the sheets, the disinfectant and the steam helped to keep her from catching the virus. That's her theory.
Well, if she wasn't around other people a whole lot, was she disinfecting clean things?
No, the disinfectant in the water.
Right. But
washing.
The fabric that was in the water, were those used by sick people and she was stirring them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now that would be counterintuitive. That would make you more likely to get sick.
I would think so, but that's her opinion. That that combination of the steam and the disinfectant, whatever it was. Maybe
we
they
should make it
special.
clear for the sake of YouTube. It just occurred to me. We're talking about 1919. Yeah. And we're not producing any theories about recent medical situations. Every time I open my mouth about it, I get in trouble. It's unbelievable. So fortunately, you know, she survived, and she was just a really remarkable dancer. But Joan, you had an inner drive. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So talk about your inner drive. It was all about proving herself to her father, making him regret that he abandoned her. That drove her for so many years. But then after a while, she kind of grew into her ambition, and it became more of an extension of her. It was always about the father, but it became more than that as she matured.
It became a part of her, actually. So am I correct that you got a contract from Louis B. Mayer? Was it Louis B. Mayer?
So did you get a contract from Louis B? I don't know if I can say this. She says, yes, the...
Okay, I was just going to ask her that. What was he like? I guess now we know. You don't have to say it, because I kind of had that feeling, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And a real misogynist too, right? So the story about changing your name, let's go back to when you were born. What were your parents thinking, giving you a name like that, such a mouthful, and just begging for people to make fun of it? Of course, my own children say the same thing because they have Irish names no one can spell or pronounce. So maybe I'm a little sensitive.
Maybe. So
how did you feel about having your name changed?
How did you feel about having your name changed? Honestly, it was a blessing, because that was a lot to carry around. People made fun of it all the time. They mispronounced it. It was a bother. So I was happy to have something simple and easy.
But you didn't like Crawford.
So you didn't like Crawford? No. There was something about it energetically that she didn't like it. It felt too abrupt. After having a lyrical name, you know, to grow, it was too much contrast for her. That's what it was.
Actually, what she said was it reminded her of crawfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what she said at the time, because they did a contest. And the name that won was Joan Arden. But there was already a Joan Arden, because fans just put the names together and they voted. So if you could have picked your own name, what would you have picked?
So what would you have picked for your name? She would have kept the Lucille, and she would have had something that was more lyrical. Like what? Is there one in particular that you can tell us that you had in mind? No, she didn't let herself go there. She was very disciplined. If she wasn't going to be allowed to do that, she wasn't going to spend time focusing on it. That was her attitude. She just really objected to the lack of refinement, because she'd had this very flowing kind of a name and an energy that goes with the name. And then to get this thing that just felt abrupt and chopped off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And guttural almost.
Yeah.
On the lips.
Yeah, her birth name was kind of flowery.
Yeah.
Sorry,
sure.
That just came out. So if I had to pick a stage name, I'd probably pick Helen Troy, because I get teased constantly. Helen of Troy. You know, when I was a child, Helen's not a very popular name in my age group. But you have a great last name, because it's unusual and it's a little foreign, if I can say that.
My name?
Your last name, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's French.
Je le sais.
That doesn't mean I speak it.
No. but it's just unusual enough that it's memorable. People always have to ask, well, how do you spell that? It makes them remember.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. Oh, so she wanted to do dancing. She didn't like the roles she was getting. She was sort of just decoration in a room, because she was cute, right? So, but she wanted to dance. So she started going to all these dance contests. Hotels had dance every day, tea dances and dance contests. And I'm kind of curious about that whole sort of subculture of the dancing in the hotels and everything. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so tell us about the dancing in the hotels. What was that about? She needed to get out around people, to get seen, to get the exposure so that she could find the opportunities. She was a social climber and, very ambitious. So being out there, letting people see her, that was a big part of it. But also she really enjoyed the feeling of flowing and dancing. And yeah, not all the dancers were fun to dance with, but she enjoyed being there, having that kind of contact with people. There's just something visceral about it that really appealed to her. And she said it felt more refined. Tea parties felt more refined. She was trying to get away from that rough and tumble, hard Scrabble kind of society that she came from and move up.
So was she doing ballroom dancing?
So what kind of dancing were you doing? Quasi. She's a snob. She wouldn't call it, quote, ballroom dancing because it wasn't the refined, really level.
The waltz and the foxtrot, but
yeah,
kind of
but that
but she wasn't doing like the Charleston and that kind of thing.
Well, she did that too. She liked that. She liked that energy, but that was in different places. Some places she went for the more refined dancing. Other places she went to let your hair down. And she
Did they have the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
She enjoyed both.
Oh. Did they have those marathon dance contests yet, or was that later in the Depression? Did they have them when you were trying to come up in dancing?
So did they have those marathon dances? Did you go to marathon dances? Yes. Yeah. And she really enjoyed that challenge. She was so competitive. That appealed to her. And she had, considering what she'd been through, she was in pretty good shape. She had, good cardiovascular, and she was able to do that.
What was the longest period of time that she danced in a marathon contest?
So what was the longest marathon that you did? $10 hours.
Oh, God.
She was maxed out at 10 hours. She couldn't go further than that.
Oh, my God. So one of my favorite stories is her, and I don't know if this was just in her head or if this was real, but her rivalry with Norma Shearer. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. So tell us about your rivalry with Norma Shearer. She didn't think much of her. She was a simp. A simp.
A simp?
That's what she called her, yes. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And very disdainful. That's the energy that she puts out about her. She didn't take her seriously. She was, surface level. She didn't have depth to her. That was her opinion. That doesn't mean that's true.
Well, she was married to Irving Thalberg, the big producer. And so she got first dibs on everything. And I think there was a lot of resentment there. Trying to be impartial, trying to be, fair about it. Was she as good of an actress as the opportunity she was given?
Great.
Not Joan, Norma.
Oh, Norma. Okay. So Are we asking Norma or Joan?
We're asking Joan, who had a real chip on her
Okay.
shoulder because she was always playing second fiddle to Norma Shearer, and she resented her because her husband was the big boss. So she got the first attempt at the script, the first opportunity for the good roles.
Yeah.
And Joan really resented it. And I'm curious, in her opinion, but for her to try to be fair, was Norma up to the quality and number of roles that she actually did get, or was that nepotism?
Yeah. So Joan, can you be honest and tell us, was she really talented enough for the roles that she was given? She will begrudgingly admit that, yes, she was talented, but it just annoyed her. And yes, a lot of resentment. And she still saying that I was better. In all fairness, she should have gotten some of the roles, maybe not all.
Well, pays to marry the boss. I mean, come on. Yeah, that was a smart career move on Norma's part. Okay. Oh, she got voted. One of these weird things they did in the 1920s. I just think this is very weird. Kind of like America's Greatest Star. What's that called? America's Greatest. You know those contests they have on television?
Yeah, but I can't think of it.
Yeah.
Talent.
Oh, America's Got Talent. Yeah. Or the dance contests. Do you think you can dance? You know, things like that. They had a thing called the Wampus Baby Stars, which is so infantilizing because it was young women. And every year they would name their stable of up and coming young starlets. And so she got voted in 1926 with Mary Astor, Dolores Del Rio, Janet Gaynor, and Fay Ray. And interesting little gossipy thing about Janet Gaynor. I'm pretty sure I have the right person here. Her great nephew played Eddie Munster on the Munster. I think maybe I'm making it up, but I think I get a lot of stuff in here that sometimes the wires get crossed. Pretty sure that's true. If not, no doubt somebody will correct me. Was it a big deal to get selected for that Wampus Baby Stars?
So Joan, what do you have to say about the Wampus Baby Stars? It was an opportunity. That's all. Yes, it's degrading now from your perspective, but at the time, we had to take the opportunities when they showed up. That was a way to be in the spotlight, to meet people, to have a chance. And all I needed was a chance, and I would prove myself.
You seem pretty practical about your ambition, kind of clear-eyed about it. Were most women that on top of it, or did they buy into the gender politics of the time?
So what do you have to say about that, Joan? There were other women like me who had that perspective. They were very pragmatic. They knew what they had to do to succeed, and wink, wink, you know what I'm talking about. And then there were the women who had the fantasies. They weren't in touch with reality. They got the short end of the stick, while we practical women were able to sidestep some of the less savory aspects of the business.
So who would you put in that category? Besides yourself?
The practical women?
Yeah, like Joan. Yeah.
Okay. So who would you put in the category with yourself? The pragmatic ones who were able to get by without being victimized. Katharine Hepburn is the first one she mentions. I think she had a grudging respect for her. She said, oh, this is like pulling teeth, but she will admit that Bette Davis had some of that. Not as much as she did.
I know.
Not as much as she did, but she had some of it.
What about Barbara Stanwyck?
Barbara Stanwyck. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
She had moxie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She
Anybody
did.
else? Yeah, nobody else coming up right now.
Hmm. So finally, she was able to break through and get some leading romantic roles. And for a while there, for about a year, she got all the romantic leads. And I want to ask her about a couple of the men that she played opposite, just because I'm curious about them for other reasons. But she had a bird's eye view. She made movies with them. They were a couple in the movie, so I presume she would get to know them a little bit. So one was Ramon Navarro, and he ended up being murdered. It was
I
very
don't know anything
sad.
about him.
He was a silent star, and he was one of
Okay.
those Latin lovers, with the slick hair and very romantic young man. And he made the transition to talking pictures somewhat. And it's been a long time since I've read about his life. So I don't know what happened from about the mid-20s to when he died. But what happened, in short, is that he was murdered by a couple of rent boys. He was gay, and he called up, and they came and they killed him. It was a tragedy. It was really sad. Kind of a ignominious way for a great star to end, because he was a huge star of the time. So what was he like as a person?
So what's your opinion you take on Navarro? He was a very sweet man, very sensitive. He respected women. That's the standout feature for her. He respected women.
Yeah. I think was he from Mexico? I think he was Mexican.
So
Am I
was
right?
he Mexican, do you know? She says yes.
Yeah. And was the transition to talkies hard for him because of his accent?
So would you say the transition was hard for him? He worked with a vocal coach to smooth out the accent, and that made a difference for him. If he had not done that, he would not have succeeded. But they were able to get him just enough where he could be understood, that he could succeed.
Yeah, he had something. You could really see it on screen. Was she aware he was gay?
Did you know he was gay? Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we had a little talk about this earlier, and it's kind of surprising sometimes that people don't recognize it.
Yeah.
Not that you can always recognize it any more than you can always recognize traits in anybody, but sometimes things are obvious, and I haven't seen a lot of his movies. I've seen a couple, and that wouldn't have been the first thing that came to mind. But then again, at that time when movies were made, they were very mannered.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really see the real person at all. It doesn't come through all the time. So the other person
she just said, Helen, remember he was acting.
Yes. Oh, I know. But that's exactly, it kind of covered his true persona. And the other one, which interestingly enough also was a gay man, was William Haynes. Does you remember him?
I don't know who he is. So do you remember William Hayes? Did you have...
No, Haynes.
Haynes?
Haynes. Haines. Yeah.
So William Haynes, did you work with him? She says, yes, she did. And what did you think about him? He was nice enough, but she didn't vibe with him like she did Navarro. Not as sensitive, more crass. She didn't appreciate him.
Oh, well, he had what happened to him was terrible, because somebody outed him, and the studio told him, break up with that guy. We can't have our star living in sin with somebody of the same gender. That was basically the conversation. And at that point, he said, I quit. And he got hired by some of the big stars in Hollywood to decorate their homes. He became the interior decorator to the stars. And he and that guy stayed together for over 50 years. I just think it's a beautiful story. It's a story of courage and loyalty. And his friends were loyal to him because when they saw that he lost his contract with the studio, they went out of their way to hire him to do their decorating so that he wouldn't, be broke. And then he was talented at it and developed a reputation around Hollywood for being good at that and made a great living. But he stayed true to his loyalty to the people he loved. You have to admire that. Not everybody does that. Did she know that about him?
So did you know about him, that he had this long-term relationship? She learned about it afterwards. When she was acting with him, he was closeted. She didn't know about it then. And her impression of him was based upon what I'm seeing is Victor Victoria. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like layers of genders. And so because he was acting to be somebody he wasn't, in real life, he was always acting, not just when he was acting as a job.
She's right.
She didn't like that. He wasn't authentic, and that rubbed her the wrong way. So the impression she had of him, they just didn't energetically buy.
Right. But now she can see that the reason for his deception was legitimate. His paranoia was founded in reality, because as soon as he was out of the closet against his will, exactly what he feared the most happened, which is so many layers of awful. It's terrible. I was just curious. Thanks. I just was curious to hear about these people that I have heard about and am interested in from a more personal level. Who was your favorite leading man?
So who was your favorite leading man? Well, Gable's at the top of the list.
Oh.
She loved him. And it's a deeper thing. It's not just infatuation or romantic love. There was a camaraderie.
Mm-hmm.
They understood each other.
Yeah. Didn't they make that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Not many people understood her.
Didn't they make a movie together early? Was he in Our Dancing Daughters? They danced together in a movie. And didn't he do Putting on the Ritz in one of those movies she was in? Am I conflating two movies?
I could not tell you what they were in together, but I know they did something together.
She might know.
Yeah. So tell us what the name of the movie was, Joan, that you did with Gable. Yeah, that's really hard to come through. Can you give us a clue? Who else was in the movie? Sorry, I'm just getting total blank.
Well, she did Our Dancing Daughters in 1928. It was her big break. And you can see it on YouTube. You can see the little shots from the movie where she does, I'm assuming it's the Charleston. I don't know. She was young, she was a flapper. She was famous for being a flapper. I didn't realize quite how much of an image for her the flapper image was, because to me, the flapper was Olive Thomas and Colleen Moore. Did she know Olive Thomas?
Did you know Olive Thomas? Oh, everybody knew Olive. Yeah. She liked her.
Did she know, does she know now that almost all of Olive Thomas's movies have been lost?
Do you know? Are you aware that her movies are mostly all gone. It's a tragedy.
Yes. I love Olive Thomas. Does she know that Olive Thomas, her spirit haunts the New Amsterdam Theater?
So are you aware that Olive haunts the theater? She heard that and she's making a joke. She says, "Oh, that's why I haven't seen her around."
She's been busy. That's too funny.
Who knew she had a sense of humor?
So she was a kind of a rival to Clara Bow. Clara Bow was the it girl. So what can she tell us about Clara Bow? Was that a real rivalry, or was that just something concocted by the movie magazines?
Okay. So did you have a rivalry with Clara? Was that true? No, they didn't. They actually had a mutual respect, but it played well for the tabloids for them to pretend they have this rivalry.
Yeah. She had a real admirer in F. Scott Fitzgerald, the Great Gatsby, because he made a lot of movies. He wrote the scripts for a whole lot of movies. He spent time in Hollywood basically drinking in a bungalow. but he made some good movies. I just don't remember what they were, but you can see his credits, in these old movies. You go, F. Scott Fitzgerald, are you kidding? Anyway, he had a lot of really nice things to say about her. His description of her was real poetic, real lyrical. So what did she think of him?
So tell us what you thought about Fitzgerald. Well, how can you not love somebody who gives you those kinds of accolades? He respected me. He understood me. He saw a side of me that few people did see, and that felt really good.
It felt like he almost shared her angst. Is that the right word? Is that what they saw in each other?
Is that true? He shared your angst? Well, let's just say he had issues and we understood one another. There was a simpatico.
Yeah. Let's see here. She's described as being obsessive about her training regimen. She had to get rid of her accent for the talkies. She had, I guess, a Midwest sort of accent, and she was from St. Louis, right? So I guess they have an accent. I don't know. But she was obsessive about it. She would read newspapers and magazines out loud, and if she found a word she couldn't pronounce, she would pronounce it 15 times in a row. She was really rigid, and, well, some would call it rigid, some would call it disciplined. So is that true?
Some would call it obsessive. So is it true that you have this trait? Were you that hard on yourself? Yeah, I had to be. Nobody else was going to do it for me. If I was going to make it, I had to be as perfect as I could be. And if that took saying a word 50 times, then that's what I would do. She was serious about her career. Driven.
I found the information. I found the information about Clark Gable. It actually was a little later than I thought. I thought it was in the late 20s, like 27, 28. That was 2 pages of notes ago. I just hit 1931, and she made 3 movies with Clark Gable. And the first was Dance Fools Dance. Does she remember that?
So, Dance Fools Dance. Can you tell us anything about that experience? Stupid movie. Didn't like it. Enjoyed working with Clark.
It's hard to imagine him as a song and dance man. It really is difficult. So, she got voted for a long time for, I don't know, 7, 8 years, maybe. It's hard to do the math. She got within the top 10 Hollywood stars, and often close to, like number 3. She was on the very top of the list until 1936, and then she sort of started to slide down. Did she recognize that maybe her star was starting to not be quite so bright?
So tell us about when you hit that spot where you started to sink in the ratings and were not quite as bright as you once had been. Well, on one level, it was devastating. On another level, it was bound to happen. Being a pragmatic person, I knew that. And I knew that I had to shift my focus and find my footing in a new direction because I wanted to continue living the lifestyle I'd become accustomed to. So I sucked it up and I did what I had to do.
Yeah, she got identified in 1938 by the Independent Theater Owners Association of America as box office poison. So they would make a list of stars who made so much money that it cost the movie theaters money to show their movies, because I guess percentage got taken out of the ticket sales to pay for the stars. And so the more the stars made because of their popularity, the less cash the movie theater got. But they made more because they were more famous, which they, it was a catch-22. Yeah. So also, I think that can I ask her this? Was it always about money, or sometimes was it about they were misogynists?
You mean, I'm not sure how you mean that.
Being called box office poison?
Oh, being labeled
like
that way.
More of them were women, and I'm wondering if it was a sexist thing as well as money.
Gotcha. Yeah, so the box office poison label, was that about misogyny, or was that really about finances? You called it, sister. It was misogyny.
Yeah. It's like pornography. Maybe not able to describe it, but you know it when you see it. Okay, 1945, she made a huge success in Mildred Pierce. But here she was, this big star, and they made her do a screen test to audition. How did she feel about that?
So how did you feel about doing the screen test for Mildred Pierce? I was livid, but what choice did I have? I needed the work, and I showed them.
She did. She got
it for myself.
She got the Academy Award. So it revived her career. And then the next the next movie she made, but it was in 2 years, she got a nomination for the Academy Award. And she did something really smart. She did something that a lot of independent, there were a few of them, but the independent female stars who were successful often did. Barbara Stanwyck, Marilyn Monroe, when they found themselves stuck in the studios, they bought themselves out of their contracts and went independent. And it almost always paid off, because she made a movie for RKO. She bought herself out of her MGM contract, made a movie for RKO, got her third Academy Award nomination. Something interesting that we don't have anymore, I guess television would be the closest comparable career choice, but a lot of big movie stars worked in radio too. Like Vincent Price worked so much in radio. How did she feel about doing that?
So what about radio? What can you tell us about that? Again, being pragmatic, it was just the thing to do. It was an avenue that was open to me. I was still out with the public. They could picture me. They knew my voice. And why not capitalize on that?
Yeah, there were a lot of stars who felt they were too big or too good for television when that started to compete with movies. Big mistake. The ones who were able to adapt and switch over, their careers lasted. Like, look, Barbara Stanwyck, the Big Valley. She's the one that comes to mind.
She just interjected. She says, "Don't get me wrong. I resented the hell out of it, but I was practical."
Yeah, you're pragmatic. I mean, it's like a business decision, right? So she made a whole lot of movies. We don't have to talk about all of them. They were good. They were interesting. Some of them were cult classics like Johnny Guitar. I won't tell you what it's often referred to as, but I'll tell you later. And then in 1961, she made one of the greatest movies of all time, which scared the liver out of me. It was in the theaters, but then it immediately went to television. And in the old days, a movie would be on television, but you couldn't access it anytime you wanted, like we can do that now,
Yeah.
right? So you had to wait for them to get around to presenting it. They were really clever about Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind, they showed it the first time it was made, and then they took it off the market. And I don't know when the next time they showed it, but people flocked to see it. It was a very smart business move. And the first time I saw it, I was about 12 or 13. It was a gigantic event. Well, for one thing, it was a 5-hour movie. It was a gigantic event. They did that with a lot of movies, but not quite as maybe top tier. This movie, I think, deserves a place of honor. They showed it on television. It was made in 61, and they showed it on television probably more than once, but I saw it in 67, 68, so not that long after whatever happened to Baby Jane. Did you ever see that movie?
Oh, yes, many times.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. It was a tour de force.
Oh, my God. It was wonderful, and I really can't imagine anybody else co-starring with her than Bette Davis. I mean, it was perfect. How did she feel about it? I know, complicated, but
yeah. So tell us about Baby Jane. Not one of her favorite memories, for sure. She was happy that it got her back in front of the public. She was happy for that opportunity. But it was pretty hellacious experience. They were at each other's throats. They did a lot of underhanded things to one another. The rivalry just was so deep and nasty. There was just that nastiness between them. And she said that can eat you up on the inside, which made it a challenge to get through. That's probably the hardest thing she's ever done, getting through that movie. But
was it jealousy? What was it between them? Just professional jealousy?
So tell us about what was the animus there? It started out as romantic jealousy, and then over the years, it deepened and just became a hatred. They couldn't stand to be in the same space, but they had to do the movie.
Romantic jealousy?
Was it over a man? More than one. Yeah, it was romantic.
Oh, anybody we know?
So, care to tell us what that involved? Who that involved? It was more than one, and that's all she wants to say. They were attracted to the same kind of man.
Yeah.
And they were in the same circles.
Yeah. I don't know who to think. I could be anybody. I'm going to take a wild guess. Robert Taylor?
Was Robert Taylor one of those men? No.
William.
He wouldn't have been attracted to Betty, but he was my type.
How about William Holden?
William Holden. Was there rivalry with William Holden? Well, this is all colored, of course, by her opinion. But she has this picture for herself that the men who were a match for her would not have been attracted to Betty. She could not see that.
Oh.
And yet, of course they would, because that powerful personality.
Well, the men may not have been attracted to both of them, but both of them could have been attracted to one guy.
Yeah, but she's looking at it from the other perspective. She's not looking
Yeah.
at it from that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I can laugh. That's funny. Okay. So in 1968, your daughter had emergency surgery, and she was 29, and she was on a soap opera playing a 28-year-old. And an arrangement was made that Joan would step in and play that role of the 28-year-old until her daughter could get back to work. I think she only took a week off, and she had major surgery. A lot of rumor about that situation. Later, her daughter accused her of always trying to upstage her. Somebody in the production said, no, we invited Joan to be in the role. Joan said at some point to somebody in media, she was just trying to help to save that job for her daughter, because they could just as easily have replaced her and that would have been it.
Yeah.
So with time and distance, like real distance, what really happened?
So tell us about what happened when you filled in for your daughter on the soap opera. She says, it's true, I really was trying to help, but she couldn't see that. She had her own issues with me. We had a challenging relationship.
Yeah, I got questions. Don't worry, I got questions.
Yeah.
So last question about work, and then we're going to talk about your personal life. One of the last things that she did, she was directed on a TV show by Steven Spielberg.
Really?
It was the first big Hollywood star that he directed. Did she see his fame and popularity kind of written on the wall?
So tell us about your experience with Spielberg. She says, you've got to realize he was very different back in those days. He was wet behind the ears. He was so green. No, I honestly did not see that he would turn out the way he did. He hadn't grown into himself yet.
I'm not sure all the movies he made. I'm not sure I could name all of them. Didn't he make E.T.?
Yeah.
It was very popular. Very popular.
Yeah, and Close Encounters, that was one of his breakthrough movies.
Right.
Yeah.
What did he know? just asking. Okay, so let's go back to 1929. She eloped with Douglas Fairbanks Jr. This is a great story, and I'm looking at this from the point of view of somebody who had a problematic relationship with her own mother-in-law. So I commiserate, right? Her mother-in-law was Mary Pickford, the actress. Her father-in-law was Douglas Fairbanks Sr. They did not like her, and they didn't like that they eloped, and they didn't talk to them for almost an entire year after they got married. And then when they finally, okay, we'll put up with you, the two men, her husband and her father-in-law, would go golfing and leave her at home with Mary Pickford. And as soon as the men were gone, Mary Pickford would go into her bedroom and shut the door. And wouldn't talk to her. So what was the relationship like? What was Mary Pickford like?
Tell us what Mary Pickford was like. Well, I respected her, and I thought she was a good actress, maybe a good person, until I got to know her personally, and then all bets were off. She made it her mission to make my life miserable, and I felt very unfairly. She didn't give me a chance. So lots of conflict, and there's a feeling of really feeling hurt by that, because this was something she had respected, and to be treated that way was such an affront.
I relate. I completely relate. Like I said, I had a problem in a relationship with my mother-in-law. Consolation prizes, I outlived her. So I relate. But I'm not clear on the relationships. Was Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Joan's husband, he wasn't Mary Pickford's biological son.
So Doug Jr., was he Mary's biological son? Is that the relationship? No, she was stepmother, but she was there.
Why was she such a Klingon mother?
So can you help us understand, why did she have that attitude towards you? It was the reputation that Joan had, and she was scandalized. She thought Crawford was a floozy, not worthy of her son, and that it was putting a stain on the family name. You know, Fairbanks was respected. It was solid in Hollywood.
Well, Mary Pickford played these really saccharine roles. She's a fully grown adult woman, and she's running around in little short baby dresses and ringlets and bonnets, you know, like she's 6 years old. I always found it cloying and annoying and disingenuous. And I'm with Joan. I mean, she was a good businesswoman, Mary Pickford. She and Douglas Fairbanks Sr. and Charlie Chaplin and one other person, I forget who, formed United Artists, maybe Max Sennett. They formed United Artists, and she was a hardcore businesswoman during a time when women just were not allowed to succeed in that kind of business, especially not movies. So yeah, there was a lot to admire about her. But that's just, I mean, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. was an adult. She was an adult. I mean, come on.
Not rational.
No. Was that typical of the time? I mean, why were they so judgmental? Because you danced?
Do you know why they were so judgmental? It was a clash of personalities, if you're really honest about it. She was a strong woman, and they clashed in that regard. So
kind of wanted
Mary was looking for reasons not to like her.
Yeah.
And she also says she thinks that Mary had a big crush on Doug Jr., and it was jealousy.
See, that's what I thought. And then I thought, well, but if she's the biological mother, then it's a whole other kind of psychopathology. But I wondered if there was competition going on in Mary's head. Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
Weird. Very weird. Well, they got divorced anyway. I'm sure Mary was quite happy. They got divorced. Joan said that, you know, on the divorce papers, it was not no fault divorce time yet. I'm getting hiccups. So when you got divorced, you had to have a reason, right? Somebody had to be at fault. And so she called him jealous and suspicious. Was he real controlling and stalkerish?
So was Fairbanks controlling and stalkerish with you? Well, by that point, I didn't like him very much, but no, I wouldn't call him stalkerish. But you had to say something, and he was willing to let me do that in order to separate. And it caused him no long-term harm.
So she married French. I think this is pronounced Franchotone. I believe he was French actor. And when they got married, they built a theater in their house. And they would have friends come over, and she and he would put on stage plays.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting?
I can't picture the two of them together.
It seems like she would overpower him, right?
Maybe. No.
Well, he wanted to be a stage actor, and she didn't understand. She wanted him to be a star. And he was, he was respected in Hollywood. He was in some movies and he was, but she really pressured him to be a film star and not a stage actor. And then she had a couple of miscarriages, and he started drinking, and there were accusations of, and they got divorced. So could she talk about that relationship and having had, if she is comfortable talking about the miscarriages. Is that what really undid the relationship?
So tell us about that relationship with Franco Tone. Was it the miscarriages that broke up the marriage, or was it something else? Partially, but not entirely. Honestly, at this point, she can admit that she was overbearing and controlling, not allowing him to be his full manly self, if you get what her drift. And that contributed to the drinking. And then, of course, the drinking created more problems. So it was almost like a avalanche. So the miscarriages started the avalanche, and then it continued.
Would she have wanted to have a successful, I mean, what did she want a baby? Was she upset? You know, some people get, especially in those days, there was, well, we've come full circle, but there was a time period when contraception and, you know, you had a little bit less control over it, you know, in those days. So people kind of just got pregnant and they were, you know, pregnant. Was she happy about it and then sad about the miscarriages, or was she a little bit more pragmatic about it? What was her attitude?
So tell us about your feelings about the miscarriages. Were you wanting to be a mother at that point in your life? She really did. She felt that was a piece of her heart that was missing, and a baby would have been appreciated and comforting and allow her to bring out the softer side, because that was all stored up inside. She kept it all locked up. So yeah, she was sad about it. But also her pragmatic side said, well, if it's not going to work out, then, you know, it opens the door for more career opportunities. So it was like she found a way to rationalize it for herself, to put it in perspective. That was
practical
her mechanism. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they got separated, and then she got married again. Well, it was roughly 10 years later. She got married again to a guy called Alfred Steele in Vegas, and he was rich, and he was in charge of Pepsi. And so she got put on the board of Pepsi, and she became the ambassador, the PR ambassador type person for Pepsi. I thought that was really interesting. When she was single in 1940, where we're jumping around here, she adopted a baby, a little girl, and she called her Joan. I thought that was an interesting choice, that she called this child Joan. And then she changed her name to Christina. And as you'll see as we go through this, there's this pattern. Her name was one thing when she was born, it got changed. She adopts a child, names her after her fake name, but then changes it. And then eventually she adopted a son with one of her husbands. And that's a whole story I'll tell you about in a minute. But my question is, what was with all the name changing? That seems kind of lost at sea with your identity, or I don't know. It seems odd to me. What was all that about?
Yeah, it does. So tell us about the name changing. What was your rationalization for that? Why? At the time she chose Joan, it was an homage to her new life, and it seemed like a good idea. But over time, having two Joans became pretty awkward, and it seemed like less and less of a good idea as time went on. So she decided to change it while the child was still young enough not to be confused by it. And it was as simple as that.
How old was the little girl when she changed it to Christina?
So what age was she when you changed the name? Somewhere between 1 and 2, like 14 months, maybe, something like that.
Okay, she was married Now, here we go. We totally skipped this marriage. She was married in 42 to a guy called Philip Terry. She knew him for 6 weeks before they got married. I don't know, a little impulsive. And they adopted a son, and his birth mother found out that the famous Joan Crawford had adopted her baby. So she tried to blackmail her. Is that the right word? Does she mean extort money from her? Because blackmail means you've got something against somebody, like information that you don't want, they wouldn't want released. So I'm curious about that. But then in reaction to this demand for money, Joan gave the baby back. And the woman took the baby back, and then she had a husband that didn't want this baby because it was the product of an affair, which is why she gave the baby up in the first place. So her husband mistreated this baby, so much so that social work stepped in and took the baby, and he was adopted out again. Very sad story. But that baby also had his, wait a minute. No, there's another one. Okay, so my question about this one is, did the mother blackmail her or extort her? What was that about?
Yeah. So tell us about the situation with the mother of your adopted son. Did she have some dirt on you? Was it really blackmail? Now, it would be more correct to say extortion. She was going to go out and tell lies about me and make up some stories, which would have caused me difficulty in Hollywood because they loved that kind of thing. People ate it up. And that would have made my life more difficult. So I decided at that point, I hadn't really attached to the kid. So I would give him back. I would solve the problem, over, done, easy peasy.
How long did she have him?
So how long did you have the baby? Weeks. It was less than a month.
Well, her biographies that you read about said it was a huge loss. So is that not true?
So the biographies say that it was a big loss for you, losing this baby. Was that not true? It could have been a big loss if I had given into my feelings, but I blocked that part off. As I said, I was a very pragmatic woman. I could not afford to let myself be taken down by this cheap con artist. So I locked it away, let it go.
Wow.
So, but underneath of that, of course it was a loss, but she shut the door on it and did not allow it to be the loss. Does that make sense?
I understand it, but I don't understand it. I can't do that. I don't compartmentalize well. How about you? Are you able to do that kind of thing?
Yes, with some stuff, not everything. But she was very good at it.
Yeah. No, if I'm upset about something, I'm upset 24/7. I am not good at,
Yeah, she said I didn't have that luck. I didn't have that luxury.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Usually everyday people don't, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's married to this guy, Philip Terry, and this was when they had the first little baby that she gave back. They adopted a different baby and named him Philip Terry Jr. But then they got divorced. And when they got divorced, it looks like the child was 4 years old, if I'm reading these dates correctly. Adopted in 42, divorced in 46. So he would have been around 4. But after the divorce, she changed his name because of the divorce. So she changed his first name to Christopher. And he had a tumultuous life. He was always in trouble, always getting kicked out of school, always expelled. He got kicked out of military academy. He got married when he was 18. He had a baby. Well, his wife had a baby when he was 19, and they went to introduce the baby to Joan, and he said, "Oh, that's your grandmother." And she said, "I'm nobody's grandmother. I'm Aunt Joan." And then the son, Christopher, never saw her again. In 1973, he had a daughter, and the daughter was very ill, and he called Joan up for help. And her response was, "She's not my granddaughter. You were adopted." So I'm just gobsmacked by that. Does she want to talk about that? What was going on there?
Yeah. So can you tell us about Christopher and not wanting to be a grandma? Help us to understand, because that seems really nasty and mean. She's saying you don't know the whole story.
Well, what is it? That's why we're here.
Yeah. Christopher had a lot of issues in his life. And yes, I'm partly to blame for that, but not completely. And yes, I admit I didn't want to be called grandma. I had a real problem with that. I had an image to maintain. I wasn't ready to go into dotage and be grandma. So I was at fault.
Hey, I'm grandmother. I take exception to that. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
She didn't. But there were just interpersonal dynamics between them that he did things she did not approve of, and she had already emotionally disconnected from him. So then he comes with this grandchild. She doesn't want to be a grandma, which exacerbated it. He took great offense by that because in his mind, of course you're grandma. How can you be this cold bitch? But that's who she was. It was almost like in spite of herself. You know, she shows me, it's like she's standing outside of her body, watching herself do this. And one part of her is aghast. How could she do this? But the other part of her is like, how could I not? That was the role I was playing. She was always playing a role.
I have a question about the son, Christopher. How much did she know about his birth family? And here's why I'm specifically asking. You get the impression he was a problem from the beginning. And I'm wondering, did he have like maybe substances damage at birth? Did he have fetal alcohol syndrome? How old was he when she got him? Was he maybe mistreated for a little while when he was an infant, you know, by whoever, foster care or orphanage or whoever? I'm just curious, how old was he when she got him? How much does she know about his biological family that might have affected his behavior? And how did he react to having his name changed?
So tell us about Christopher's biological family and the baby. Was the baby healthy and hearty, or were there problems that came with him as a baby? No, there was no evidence of that kind of problem, or she would never have adopted him, because she did screen for those kinds of things. She was very particular in that respect. So it wasn't there in the beginning. There were just behavioral issues that started with him at a very young age. And maybe there was something that was undiagnosed, but they didn't know that at the time. She was just dealing with the baby that showed up and the difficulties. And besides, her life was no picnic. It was hard for those kids, and she knew that. But she was less tolerant of it than she ought to have been, and she sees that now. So what was the other question?
How did he take getting his name changed?
Oh, so how did Christopher react to having his name changed? At the time, it seemed like it was no problem. But later on, when he was older and we were having problems, he threw it in my face that I couldn't accept him for who he was. I had to remake him into my ideal of what my child should be. And he resented the hell out of that.
So in 47, she adopted twin girls, and there's not a lot to really say. They always defended her, and they died in 2007, and then the other one died in 2020. And really not a lot of information there, except that the two older children and the two younger children were estranged. And I will say this, you are a different parent for each of your children. Mm-hmm. And the greater the age difference, the gap between the children, the more different you are as a parent. I mean, there are 12 of us in my family. My parents were in their early to mid 20s when I was born. My mother was in her mid 40s when my youngest sister was born. That's a big difference, you know, and your relationship is different. The dynamics, interpersonal dynamics are going to be different because you're not the same person, right? The child is not the same person, and the mother and father are not the same. So I always take it with a block of salt when siblings debate and disagree about the behavior and the nature and the quality of parenting. You know, you really have to dig into that. You can't, you know. And the twins were very protective and defensive of her towards their mother, on behalf of their mother, when they were dealing with their older siblings. So anyway, she became this representative of Pepsi. I mean, we're moving on in time. She retired from Pepsi when she was 65. She got the Cecil B. DeMille Award, lots of accolades. She was last seen at a book party, and then she had a heart attack a little tiny bit after that in 1977. And I think this is the saddest story. 4 days before she had this unexpected heart attack, she gave away her little dog because she couldn't take care of it anymore. So my question would be, did she know there was something going on with her heart?
Yeah. So Joan, your dog, did you give her away because you knew that you were having physical issues? She was afraid that she was. She felt something was off, but she didn't know for sure. And she just had this feeling. It was a feeling of being overwhelmed. The dog was too much for her at that point, and she wanted to put her somewhere safe. So it was that simple. It was nothing complicated like you might think it was. It was just a very practical choice for her.
Yeah, I know. I understand that choice. Would you give it to a friend?
So who did you give the dog to? I think it was somebody who had worked for her, like a secretary, like a private secretary, who knew the dog.
My question was really more, did she have like a psychic premonition?
Oh, okay. So did you have some kind of a psychic premonition? Maybe, but she wouldn't have called it that at the time. She did not go in for all that stuff. She had a feeling. So yeah, intuition, you can call it, but just a feeling.
She was voted the 10th greatest female star of classic American cinema in 1999. I have to say that surprised me. Yeah. And Playboy picked her as number 84 out of 100 sexiest women of the 20th century. What does she think about these awards?
Yeah. So what do you think about those awards, Joan? She's laughing. She loves it because, hey, I had to be dead, but I got the accolades.
What does she think about the fact that she has a huge gay following? They really honor her struggles, and they for some reason really relate to her. What does she think about that?
So what do you think about the gay fans? She loves it, soaks it up. She feels she deserves it. And it's like, these are my people who understand me. It feels really good to be understood.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's the whole mommy dearest thing. And I don't want to belabor that because, like I said, I feel like there's the daughter's truth, there's her truth, and then there's the real truth, And so perception is everything. I'm sure that the film hurt her feelings, the book and the film hurt her. And sometimes it's hard to look at ourselves and our flaws, our failings, and then also difficult to be misrepresented. So some famous people who knew her, who acted with her, like June Allison and Helen Hayes, and somebody called Vincent Sherman, I don't know who that is, said that they saw strict discipline with the children. But then others said, like Myrna Loy, called it a fantasy. And her daughter's, the one who wrote the book, Christina, her daughter's ex-husband, said that, well, Joan was always nice to me. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about it. Betty Davis said, this is pretty kind. Betty Davis said, I was not Miss Crawford's biggest fan, but I still do respect her talent. What she did not deserve was that detestable book. Horrible. So what does she think of those final words of Betty Davis?
Yeah, so what do you think of Betty Davis's quote about you? She appreciates it. It really touched her. She would not have expected that in a million years. And it was healing for her to hear that. Felt good. She felt understood.
Yeah. Does she have anything that she wants to say about the book and the movie? I mean, like I said, there's her story and her daughter's story, and then there's the truth, right?
Yeah. So what would you like to say about the book and the movie and your relationship with Christina? It's water under the bridge. She doesn't want to rehash it. It was what it was. They both made mistakes. And, because it was Hollywood, it was blown up bigger than it might have been otherwise. There was a lot of drama in her life. And granted, Christina grew up around that drama. So she was affected by that. She does not see herself as the mommy dear she was portrayed. She doesn't feel that was her at all. She feels like, yeah, she was strict, but there was love there. There was support. She gave them a good life, and she feels betrayed.
Yeah, I can understand that. It was a harsh book. Yeah. Hurt people. Yeah. And obviously her daughter lashed out. Was it justified? I don't know. I wasn't there. Yeah. I reserve judgment.
That there were people behind the scenes who were encouraging that with Christina. It's like,
what kind of people?
People in the publishing world who knew they could make a lot of money. And so they goaded her and helped her exaggerate things. That's Joan's opinion, of course.
Do you know what that reminds me of? I'm a little afraid to even say this because some of these people are still alive. Reminds me of the O.J. Simpson situation. Do you remember that whole publishing thing that went on and that woman in the publishing? Yeah. Well, this was very interesting. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate her being so honest. Thank you.
Yeah. It was interesting for sure.
There was anything else?
More to her than I ever thought. So give her that.
Yeah. Does she have anything to add? I mean, before we go?
Yeah. So anything else you want to add, Joan? She's grateful for the opportunity to tell her story. She feels very misunderstood. But,
yeah.
Again, water under the bridge, can't change it. But she is glad to clear the air. That feels good, and she appreciates it.
Joan, don't sweat it. The entire country of Canada is mad at me right now.
Thank you.
It's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. And,
You're
and
welcome.
I was joking. Now I'm afraid to crack a joke, you know? I'm afraid people won't, well, they'll think I'm totally serious, and I'm not. I'm joking. Best way to deal with things is humor, right? All right. So thank you very much, Deborah. And thank you,
Pleasure.
everybody, for watching. A little bit closer to Halloween, getting closer. Before I stopped eating chocolate, Halloween was my favorite holiday because my kids had to go to bed sometime. They had candy. You don't want to know. It's
Bye, everybody.
horrible. Bye.